All right, welcome in everybody. This is Expat Stacker. We got some big news to discuss. Today is August 15th, 2020. And according to regulatory filings, Mr. Warren Buffett's hedge fund, Berkshire Hathaway, has made a huge bet into gold, investing over $500 million. The reason why this is newsworthy, just in case you don't know, is that Mr. Warren Buffett over the years has not been a fan of gold, to say the least. As you can see from the title here, Berkshire makes a bet on gold market that Buffett once mocked. He has been relentlessly criticizing gold for several decades. So the fact that he's now investing in it is definitely newsworthy. And actually, Mr. Buffett has been doing a lot of things that are uncharacteristic for him this year. For example, not buying the coronavirus dip. He's famous for, just basically saying, it's simple. Just go ahead and buy when things are low and sell when they're high. That's how you make money. But he did not make any major investments. In fact, he divested from airline stocks earlier this year. So that is uncharacteristic, and that's not consistent with his proclaimed investment strategy over the years. Another thing is that Mr. Buffett hasn't really been a huge fan of stock buybacks. He's been very critical of them in the past and says that they're only good basically when you have nothing better to do with your money. And he thinks that, it's kind of a lazy tactic. And so he's been pretty critical or apprehensive to do that in the past, but he's done that this year to the tune of over $5 billion. So that is also very uncharacteristic. And now he's investing in gold. And if you want to find out how much he has kind of almost hated gold in the past, let's look at some quotes here. This is from Kitco, and they're talking about how much disregard he's had for gold in the past. So this is a quote from Mr. Buffett in 1998, where he said, "Gold gets dug out of the ground in Africa or someplace, then we melt it down, dig another hole, bury it again, and pay people to stand around guarding it. It has no utility. Anyone watching from Mars would be scratching their head." All right, so you can think whatever you want to think about that, but I'm just telling you those are his thoughts, not mine. In 2009 on CNBC, he said, "I have no views as to where it will be, but the one thing I can tell you is it won't do anything between now and then except look at you. Whereas, Coca-Cola will be making money. And I think Wells Fargo, which is, by the way, in 2020, now the company, one of the banks he's divested from, will be making a lot of money, and there will be a lot, and it's a lot. It's a lot better to have a goose that keeps laying eggs than a goose that just sits there and eats insurance and storage and a few things like that." So he's been very critical of gold in the past. You get the picture. What I'd like to do now is go through this article very quickly, just so that we are all on the same page as to what happened, and then we'll discuss. But before we do that, I do want to say that my very first video on this channel was about Warren Buffett saying that stocks are better than gold. That's the title of my very first video, and in it I go through a Yahoo Finance article in which Warren Buffett and Yahoo Finance basically say that stocks are always better than gold, which obviously us stackers, we know not to be the case. I think Warren Buffett probably saw my YouTube video, so that's probably, why he decided partly to get into gold. I'm just kidding. But even some stackers tend to say that gold is not an investment, that's because it doesn't pay dividends. However, anyone who says that, in my opinion, does not understand the difference between different asset classes. Okay, there are different asset classes. Paying dividends is not a requirement for something to be considered an investment. That's one type of investment. But even in the stock market, there are growth stocks which pay little or no dividends because they return value to their shareholders by increasing in value over time. Very similar to what gold does. So, with that out of the way, gold is an investment, and that's why one of the most legendary investors of all time has just invested in it. Now, let's take a look at why he did that, okay? So, this is coming from Bloomberg. All right, let's go ahead and read this article. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway Inc. added Barrick Gold Corp. to its portfolio in the second quarter, sending shares of the world's second largest miner of the metal surging. Berkshire took a new position in Barrick, buying 20.9 million shares, or 1.2% of the company's outstanding stock, with a current market value of $565 million, according to a regulatory filing on Friday. The filing shows moves made by Buffett or his two investing deputies, Todd Combs and Ted Welcher. In the past, Buffett, the billionaire chairman of Berkshire, cautioned against investing in the metal because it's not productive, like a farm or a company. Now, gold miners are benefiting from surging bullion prices that are boosting margins as costs of production have steadied, making them increasingly attractive investments. Large miners, including Barrick and Newmont Corp., have been hoping to woo back generalists who fled the sector years ago. Paulson & Co., run by billionaire hedge fund manager John Paulson, also added to its holdings in Barrick. Barrick shares rose 7.4% as of 5:32 p.m. in after-hours trading in New York. Buffett might have been adverse to gold in the past, but he has bet big on metals before. In 1997, he bought 129.7 million ounces of silver, banking on demand exceeding production and reuse. He bought most of it for less than $6 an ounce. Oh man, $6 an ounce. And sold it after. He said, 9 years later, I was the silver king there for a while, he said at the time. The jump in gold prices has boosted investors' willingness to pump billions into the industry, with precious metals miners raising $2.4 billion in secondary equity offerings during the second quarter. Gold has gotten a boost as Federal Reserve interest rates cut and a plunge in real government bond yields lifted demand for the metal, which doesn't offer interest. Again, that does not mean it's not an investment. All right, read more. Barrick to play it safe, even as wave of pandemic aid boosts gold. Filings released this month don't include hedge funds' current position, which may have changed since the end of the quarter. Money managers who oversee more than $100 million in the U.S. must file a Form 13F within 45 days of each quarter's end to list those stocks as well as options and convertible bonds. The filings don't show non-U.S. securities, holdings that aren't publicly traded, or cash. Okay, so that basically tells us that there might even be more people investing in these mining companies and into gold and silver and copper and platinum and palladium and all of these precious metals that we don't even know about, because some of them are not required to file depending on their status. What are we going to do? What are we going to talk about here? I mean, I would love to say, this guy, he's been talking badly about gold for a long time, and I'm just glad that I have been investing in something that all his years of being a so-called expert have finally led him to. It would be great to kind of mock him, since he's basically mocked gold bugs relentlessly over the past few decades. But what I actually want to do here, I think there's a valuable lesson that we can learn, and that is, you don't have to abandon your principles, but it's great to be able to be flexible enough to adapt to the circumstances. And I actually think that that's what Warren Buffett is doing, and I actually applaud him for being able to eat his humble pie and get into gold with the rest of us, where the real money is. And we need to be able to do the same with our strategies, with our techniques, with our buying habits and sources and stuff like that. We constantly got to be able to, not just stick to, what worked in the past. We got to be able to change and adapt with new circumstances, and not just be dogmatic and cling on to what worked in the past for us. So I'm saying that we can actually learn from this guy and welcome him with open arms into the community of real money. Yes, he's been very disrespectful and arrogant in the way he's criticized gold. But what he's actually saying from an investment perspective about gold and also about stock buybacks is, don't do it unless there's nothing better to do with your money, because gold just quote unquote sits there, doesn't earn interest, doesn't pay dividends. He's also said the same thing about stock buybacks. Don't do it unless the conditions are that favorable to you and you don't have anywhere else better to park your money. Now, what I've always said, I've been saying this for a year, guys. Listen to my discussion topic videos and you'll see. Pay attention to the institutional investors, what they're doing, not what they're saying, what they're doing. You can listen to what they say as well, but you've got to have a trained ear, because what they say oftentimes doesn't apply to us. So what is Warren Buffett doing? What is he doing? He believes that these bank stocks, that all of these other financial instruments, these asset classes, are not as good right now as parking his money in gold and doing stock buybacks. So what does that tell you guys about the US dollar, about the safety, the security, the stability of the US dollar? What does that tell you about stocks right now? Especially the stocks that he's dumping are financial stocks, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, right? This Kitco article that I looked at earlier talks about what he offloaded and how much he bought. And there's some reactions here which are fun. But what this tells you guys, interpret the action. All right, interpret the action. That's actually the name of this article here on Yahoo Finance about Berkshire Hathaway's stock buybacks. Interpret it. All right. There's a lesson here. I would love to just make fun of him and be like, I told you so. At least I'm doing the right thing, and now you're finally just catching up. It would feel great to do that, but guys, that's not really the smart thing to do. I want to help you guys. I want to help myself. I always say pay attention to what the institutional investors are doing and what Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett's actions. I mean, obviously he knows what he said in the past about gold, right? He knows he's been making fun of it for decades, relentlessly, on end, mocking us. So he knows he's going to have to eat some humble pie, right, by doing this. But guess what that means? He thinks that this is the best thing right now. Gold is the best thing, right? And guys, if you go back and look at some of my previous discussion topic videos, I tell you why. It's not just gold. Silver is also really great. It was great before the pandemic. I outlined several reasons why. And this really is good for the mining industry, because I tell you, it was hurting. It was hurting bad even before this pandemic situation. I outlined exactly why in my market overview at the beginning of this year. So if you want to see that, I'll leave a link in the description. You go watch the whole video. I pretty much outlined all the reasons why. But it's not just silver, it's also copper, guys. And platinum and palladium also have a lot of industrial uses. And so those are in this discussion as well, guys, because guess what? The supply for all of these things is the same place. It's the same thing he made fun of in the past. Oh, it gets mined out of the ground. Yeah, you're right. It gets mined out of the ground. And guess what? There was a global shutdown, right? So guess what? There's going to be a shortage of it, right? So even if this is a short-term play for him and he still believes everything he said in the past, his actions, right, we should pay attention to. I always say pay attention to the actions of the institutional investors. I've talked in the past about Credit Suisse discontinuing long 3x levered ETFs in gold and silver because they didn't want to lose money. They don't want to pay out all that money because they believe that gold and silver is going up. I've talked before about the institutions, Bank of America saying that gold is going to $3,000 an ounce. Okay, I've talked about it relentlessly on end. I keep using that word today. 4 years. So guys, this is big news because it shows that even the biggest gold critics out there are now getting into it. All right, so this is where you want to be. I personally am not going to be selling. Okay, going to continue buying. I believe we are maybe in the middle or so on this run up, and I believe it's going to last for about a decade. Those are my personal beliefs. I believe that because of what I've studied and seen. You guys have to do your own research. I try to share everything I can and my perspective, and hopefully it helps, but I'm not telling you what to do or what not to do. I'm just telling you what I see. So guys, I hope that was helpful. This is pretty big news and pretty exciting. And I've been talking with a few other YouTubers about it. I talked to Silver Conundrum. By the way, if you haven't already done so, please go check out Silver Conundrum's channel. The guy has one of the best stacking channels out there, period. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give another shout out to Silver5150, who turned me on to Silver Conundrum's channel in the first place. So guys, check out those channels. Let me know what you think about Mr. I Hate Gold, investing in gold now. And guys, this is the Expat Stacker. I'll catch you on the flip side.